If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, as well as follow me and subscribe to me on all my other social media platforms. What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and we are at day 9, getting closer to the end of the 12 days of metal, where it's a holiday collaboration series of myself and other YouTubers that love metal, and we talk about a favorite album of ours from a particular subgenre of heavy metal each of the 12 days heading into Christmas. And, well, now we're going to get a little bit polarizing for this episode. We're going to be talking metalcore. I know metalcore tends to get a bad reputation, especially since the 2000s bands, but metalcore, there's a lot of great stuff in metalcore. Yeah, there's some bad stuff, but there's plenty of great stuff in metalcore as well. After all, to explain what metalcore is, metalcore was essentially the fusion of extreme metal, thrash metal, hardcore punk, and crossover thrash, like just mixing all those sounds together into what would become metalcore. Now, of course, metalcore has splintered into so many different directions. You got bands that are known as metallic hardcore within the metalcore realm that's a little more hardcore groove based and a little more groove metal oriented as well. And then you get the melodic metalcore bands, which kind of take metalcore and mix it with the melodic death metal sound and create something of their own. And then there's deathcore, mixing metalcore and death metal together, and even mathcore, mixing progressive metal and grindcore into the metalcore sound in order to create something chaotic and odd. So, plenty of different varieties when it comes to metalcore, but the album I'm going to choose kind of fits a little bit in the melodic metalcore side, and even classic metal, and that is, of course, one of my favorite albums of all time, Avenged Sevenfold, Waken the Fallen. I've been a big fan of this album ever since I was a kid, and I still hold a special connection to this album. I would say, in my opinion, out of the early to mid-2000s metalcore sound, this was one of the best things to come out, because when you consider Avenged Sevenfold's early stuff, like their first album, it was way more metalcore on the more punky side. Here, this was metalcore on the metal side of the scale. After all, it's kind of hard to call this straight up metalcore, because like 80 to 90% of these songs have guitar solos. So there kind of lies the difficulty of labeling this straight up metalcore, because there's just so many other genre styles being lingered in here, like thrash metal, power metal, and even melodic death metal thrown into the mix. And when you have songs like Unholy Confessions, Chapter 4, Radiant Eclipse, Clairvoyant Disease, I mean, the band showcasing their influences loudly and proudly of bands like Bad Religion, The Misfits, Metallica, Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, At the Gates, Sepultura, Slayer, Judas Priest, just all over the place showcasing on this album in terms of everything it has to offer. Great lead work, cool vocals, killer drum work, and very well written song structures. So yeah, Waking the Fallen, Avenged Sevenfold, my pick for metalcore. But of course, how do my cohorts feel, and what did they choose?
Favorite metalcore record? I hate that term, but I get it. I understand where we're trying to come from there, because lots of bands get defined as metalcore, but there's so many other genres that they could fall under, but I understand where we're coming from here. Favorite metalcore record would be 2004's Killswitch Engage, The End of Heartache, a banger from beginning to end. It's the first record to feature Howard Jones. Of course, Howard's no longer with the band. The original vocalist Jesse Leach is back with the band, and they've been putting out some really good stuff with Jesse too. But End of Heartache to me is their centerpiece. Almost it feels like every track written for that record was meant to be a single. Of course, not all of them did become singles, but definitely had the speed metal element was there. and of course the hardcore and the punk, attitude and such. The pop music element, which is really important in metalcore, or that definition of metalcore, whichever way we're looking at it. Again, I hate that term. It really stands out to me. It's a tried and true metalcore record. I don't listen to a lot of metalcore, believe it or not. I mean, I listen to. I don't shy away from it, but when I do, this is definitely a favorite record of mine.
Hello, hey, yes, I am back. Like I said, you're gonna see me for the rest of the series. Like I said, we're almost done to that series. This is day number 9, if I'm not mistaken correctly. For this day, it's a subgenre that I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not the biggest fan of the subgenre, but I'm willing to give it a shot. And of course, that is metalcore. Like I mentioned before, I am not, and I repeat, I am not the biggest metalcore fan, because for the fact that metalcore nowadays has been associated with bands like Break Me the Horizon, Asking Alexandria, those kind of bands that I personally don't like. I'm not nothing against those bands. They're not my cup of tea, to be honest. If it was like more of the I guess, old metalcore bands, I would probably appreciate more. But metalcore is always a subgenre that I never got into, even to this day. Even when I was in my quote unquote phase back in middle school, high school, I never got into metalcore. Like I said, Bring Me the Horizon, Asking Alexandria, Chance on the fucking floor. I never got into those bands because I always thought that was the metalcore sound. It wasn't until years later that I actually found out that metalcore started way back and probably the late 90s to early 2000s. And I thought, what the fuck? Where was this shit when I was growing up in the quote unquote metalcore scene? Which is a shame that some of these albums, the album I'm going to mention, doesn't really show as much appreciation as something from right now. But you know what? I prefer the old school metalcore than this modern metalcore, because I believe, even because there's some good metalcore out there like Converge, which is a really good metalcore band nowadays in most recent albums. But like I said, I'm not the biggest metalcore fan. But for this day, I chose an album that I quite frankly can say is probably my go-to metalcore album if I were to listen to metalcore. And of course, I am talking about Alive or Just by, of course, Killing Engage. This is probably their second album in the discography, and the first album to actually introduce, if I remember its name, I have my notes as well, Jesse Lynch into the band as lead vocals, which he will probably still be around to probably the early 2000 teens. He will leave the band, if I remember correctly. But with this album, I remember when I was discovering, unfortunately, bands like Asking Alexandria, Bring Me the Horizon, Killswitch Engage was one of the bands that stood out the most because they were more metal. And that's a perfect way to describe it. They were more heavy, they were more metal than those other bands, and I always kind of grabbed towards that band. And of course, this was the first album that actually introduced me to the band. And of course, it has one of my favorite songs in Child Discovery, which is Fixation of the Darkness, which also has lead vocals from the former vocalist, which I can remember his fucking name right now. Howard Jones, yeah. Howard Jones was, unfortunately, he left the band after this, if I'm correct. He actually came back after Jesse Lynch left. If I'm correct, like I said, I'm not the biggest Killswitch Engage fan, so correct me down in the comments. I would appreciate it. But the fact that both of these vocalists were in the song actually made a fucking big deal out of it. But also, of course, when you go deep into the album with Number and Days, To the Son of the Man, of course, The Element of One, Levi and Friday, Without a Name, Rise Inside. To me, this is my go-to album when it comes to metalcore, because, like I said, I'm not the biggest metalcore fan, but everything about this album is great. The album cover, which I think Levi's gonna put it somewhere here. I think it's a really unique album cover because it doesn't really speak out metalcore. Like I mentioned before, I'm always into this stuck in my fucking brain about bands like Bring Me the Horizon, Asking Alexandria has this kind of weird album covers, and with this album cover, it doesn't give me that metalcore vibes, but it's inside that counts. That, oh my fucking god, this entire album is fucking great. Like, if you're a person who's wanting to listen to metalcore but not the modern metalcore, give Killswitch Engage a chance. You might actually like him. Like I said, I'm not the biggest Killswitch Engage fan, but I can appreciate what they have done for the beginnings of the genre, and unfortunately, what later on became the modern metalcore. Which, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of metalcore, to be honest, but I had to pick an album for this day, and this was the first one that popped up. So, for like I mentioned before, Alive or Just Breathing by Kill Switch Engage is my pick.
What's up, guys? Just Josh here for day 9 of the 12 Days of Metal. Today we are covering metalcore. My favorite metalcore album of all time is Alive or Just Breathing by Kill Switch Engage, their second album released in 2002. This album, I first heard it back in summer of 2019, and I was just absolutely enamored by this album. I'd heard some Kill Switch Engage. I think the only Kill Switch Engage song I had heard before this album was probably The End of Heartache. Actually, no, I heard This Fire Burns as well from WWE. So those two songs I've heard before at the time. But once I listened to this album, like, holy shit, I just had it on repeat. I go on vacation with my family every summer, and I have a tradition to try to get into a new band every time we go on vacation. So Kill Switch Engage happened to be the band I got into that particular time, and I listened to that album nonstop the whole week. I just had it on loop the whole week. I really fucking love this album. I know more people probably prefer The End of Heartache or As Daylight Dies, and those are great records too, but Alive or Just Breathing just always did it for me, man. I do like Jesse Leach a bit more than Howard Jones. Howard Jones, I feel, has more range with his cleans, although Jesse has improved tremendously since he's came back to Kill Switch with his cleans. Now his cleans are fucking amazing. But it's not like he ever sucked at cleans. It's just he's improved a lot since he's been back in Kill Switch. But on this album, his clean vocal was really good too. But his screams, man, Jesse Leach's screams, I've always found to be more just emotional, more powerful, more emotive than Howard's. But again, Howard has great screams too. Like, it's kind of yin and yang with them. They both are amazing vocalists, but have certain things that they're a little bit better at than the other one. But anyways, every song on this album is fucking amazing, but my top favorites have to be Numbered Days, Fixation on the Darkness, My Last Serenade, Life to Lifeless, the sorta title track, Just Barely Breathing, To the Sons of Man, Temple from the Within, Vitae Infra, and Rise Inside. But you really can't go wrong with any song on this album. They all bang. This album is a masterpiece through and through.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the 12 Days of Metal. Hope you guys enjoyed the following albums that we've talked about on this episode, and I hope you all have a very Merry Christmas indeed. Horns high. See you guys in the new year.